I've been asked to introduce our next speaker, and it's such a pleasure. We're really lucky to have her. Thomas Wolfe famously said, and it was before COVID, you can't go home again. But Dayna Inskeep has willingly zoomed in from Coos Bay, Oregon at a critical time as our schools struggle to redefine education in the face of all of the pandemic uncertainty. Dayna attended our own San Ramon Elementary, Sinaloa Middle School, and San Marin High. But it was especially San Ramon and Miss Saavedra that influenced her to become a teacher. Dayna's 26 years as a K-3 teacher has allowed her to mentor and turn so many more through the most formative stage of their lives and instill, as we know, that sometimes elusive lifetime love of learning in them. In what I refer to in my work, and I have all of these metaphors, some of them are, crazy metaphors, but the lily pad theory of life is one of them. And Dayna stands out, I can see, as a safe and secure lily pad for kids to hop out to as they leap into that big pond of life. The schools in Oregon, I understand, closed at the same time as ours did, and stayed closed through the rest of the term, the 2020 term. But after careful planning, some of which Dayna contributed, she went back to the classroom on September 21st and hasn't left it since. And now we are lucky enough to get the benefit of her wisdom and experience as she still navigates an obviously steep learning curve. I also understand that the It's Family card was played to get her. She is also Tony and Gary Brayman's daughter. And without further ado, I am so pleased to introduce Dayna Inskeep. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and now all those nice things said about me. Well, I'm really excited to be here. I love to talk about my kids because they're pretty amazing. Just a little background. I live on the Southern Oregon coast, and I don't know if you can see out the window, it is not raining today, so that is not a true statement. It does not rain all the time in Oregon. In my district, we have one high school, one middle school, two 3 through 6, and then two K2 schools. And I am in a brand spanking new, just opened on September 21st building. And it's pretty amazing to have this building, which I think has kind of helped with the whole COVID thing because it's clean, it's sanitized, and it's a brand new space to be in, which allowed us to kind of make our plans whatever we wanted them to be because we were starting from scratch. I'm going to share my screen with you, I think. I have to be honest with you, we don't Zoom in Coos Bay, we Google Meet. So I'm really good at Google Meet, but I will go ahead and I want to share.
Chris, do you have to enable screen sharing?
I've made her co-host, so it should work. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Are you seeing it?
No.
Not yet.
Okay, because I've lost my whole screen. I can see. All right. Well, now I've lost all you guys too. Oh, this is not a good start, guys. Okay, share my entire screen. Yes. We'll try again. It's a really good slideshow.
There it is. It's almost
there. How about now?
Yes.
Yay! All right. So just a little background as far as the education models that you may be hearing a lot about in the media or, people who you're talking to. We have in Coos Bay 3 models. There's a comprehensive distance learning, which means kids are not allowed to go back to school. And so they are doing it through the computer. And like I said, we use Google Meets and the Google Classroom. Teachers can assign things. They have meetings with groups of kids, the whole class. They can do one-on-one, but it is all online. Then there is an online only portion where those are families who chose not to come back at all to the classroom, even if we were allowed to. They only wanted to do online school. It's akin to homeschooling, except for it's a program that was purchased and provided by the district, and district teachers meet with kids once a week, or some do it every day. So you have access to a school district teacher through that program. And then there is in-person learning, also sometimes referred to as hybrid learning. And those are kids who are face-to-face for part of the day. And then there is a component of at-home work. Either, we don't call it home work, we call it work at home. But materials that they take home and work on and bring back, or they do have access to online applications that they can use. So those are the 3 things that we use in our district.
Dayna, could I interrupt you a second?
Yeah.
I'm only looking at your name. Does anybody else see her presentation?
I can see the
I
presentation.
see the presentation.
Yes, I see the presentation.
I see the whole thing.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, it just came up on mine. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm sure my name looked great. Anyway, here's a timeline of what's kind of happened in a year. And we are actually on the eve of the 1-year anniversary. So last March 13th, we went to school in the morning. We were pretty positive, by 8 o'clock that morning that we were going to be shut down. But we thought it was going to be for 2 weeks. We had 1 week and then spring break, and then we were certain we were coming back in April and it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. That day was crazy, with all teachers trying to put together some sort of packet for kids to take home, so that week that before spring break, they were at least doing something. I'm surprised the copy machines even made it through that day, because there was just a lot of behind the scenes work trying to get ready. Plus, we were trying not to freak out kids, because we didn't know what was going on, and they certainly didn't know what was going on. But as we know, kids oftentimes look to the adults that they're around. And if we were freaking out and worried and in a panic, then that's what they were going to take away from it. And I know that the staff that I work with did a fantastic job of just kind of, okay, we'll see what happens. We'll be back together. Of course, we weren't back together. In April, when they did announce that we were closed, the governor made that announcement. It was emotional, even though everybody knew it was going to happen. We knew we weren't coming back, but to have the governor tell us, school will not reopen in the 2020 year, was a pretty powerful thing. I remember crying when she told us that, and it's like, okay, we're gonna be okay. But it was very emotional knowing that the kids that I had worked with, I wasn't working with the same way anymore. We were asked by our district to maintain weekly contact with parents, mostly to make sure that they had food. If they needed any sort of help, we could provide whatever. We can give them phone numbers of people to help. We were supposed to meet with kids, although lots of parents at that time did not have access, either having a device or the ability to log on to anything. So that was kind of a hit and miss. There are some kids that I met with once a week, and we would just be meeting and talking and laughing, for 45 minutes. Or, sometimes I'd have a kid that I didn't talk to at all for the entire springtime. And so that was really, really a tough thing, total change in the way that I've always done my job. That's for sure. By the time we got to June, the state had started looking at how they were going to open us up, and they came out with what's called the Ready School Safe Learners document, which I think we're on like edition 7 or 8 by now. It changes frequently. Our administration at the district level was tasked with making sure that each school came up with a blueprint for how they could open safely. And because of the requirements from the state, each school's blueprint was completely different. So a group of teachers met starting in June, they met in July, we met in August to kind of put together what we thought would work in a new school in a completely foreign environment to what we were used to teaching. And then finally in September, and almost 3 weeks later than we normally start, we were able to start K3 and K3 only, because at that time our metrics would not allow for any of the older kids to get back into school. Through the fall, we were able to mitigate the virus. We had a couple cohorts that were shut down, but for the most part, we were open and running and things were great. Around December, so probably that Thanksgiving holiday and the spike that came after that, we were told that our numbers were too high and that we were going to have to shut down. And I think we were told that on a Wednesday, and we needed to be ready the next Wednesday to send everything home and go online. But we were also told to make sure that we planned for being in person, because it might be okay to stay open because our numbers will go down. So we were, again, that whole situation of doing 83 different things plus our jobs, planning for in-person, planning for online in a span of a week. And we sent home the materials with the morning group, and by the afternoon group, the state had determined what they call safe harbor, which means that once a school has opened, they do not have to close in Oregon unless they have an outbreak of COVID. So that was kind of a crazy time. And as you can see at the bottom, our high school is still trying to get back to in-person. Unfortunately, Coos County is one of 2 counties in the state of Oregon that is still in the extreme risk. So we cannot open yet. The governor wants everybody opened by that April 12th date. So that's the new goal. And we'll kind of see what's going to happen from there. Here's a little comparison to how my job has changed. So last year, I had 25 students. They were all first graders, and they went to school for 6.5 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, and then Friday they had an early release day so that the teachers can do their meetings. And we should have gone September 2nd until the middle of June, but we only made it till March 13th. This year, I have 22 students. They are first and second graders blended. What's different is I have 12 students in the morning. They're here for 2 hours and 45 minutes, and then they go home. I have about an hour and a half break between the sessions, and then 10 afternoon students come. And they are expected to do about 7 hours of work at home of stuff that I have assigned for them. And the goal is we're going to go all the way till June 18th. The state, when they came up with their blueprint, there were tons of requirements. These are the biggies. Students and staff are all required to wear face coverings, and that means a face mask, not a face shield, although shields can be used for medical purposes if they're needed. Our speech teacher uses them because obviously when you're trying to help students with speech, they need to be able to see your face. But at all times, face coverings are on. Students have to be 6 feet apart at all times. Interestingly, I can be closer to the students, but they cannot be close to each other. Students have to be cohorted. So we are with my morning class is 12 kids and myself, and we have an EA for an hour. That's all we see during the day. We do not interact with any other students, with any other staff. We don't have recess with other classes. We don't have PE with other classes. We are our own being. We have to contract trace, which means every single time somebody goes in or out of the room, we have to write where they went, how long they were gone, and I have to keep those easily available to the health department if they need them for a month at a time. So I have to have a contact tracing for a month. We have to wash and sanitize everything. So kids sanitize their hands before they come into the room, before they leave the room. We wash desks. We do, the doorknobs. They can't touch the pencil sharpener. I do that. So they can't touch materials. So if they use a ruler, I have to either sanitize that ruler before someone else can use it, or I have to take it and have it sit out for 72 hours before anyone else uses it. So we don't share any sort of supplies. I give the kids what they need, and if they need something, they ask me for it. I think, here's my classroom. Oh, looks so nice. That's that brand new building I was telling you about. And the regulations stipulate that based on the size of the classroom, we can fit 14 students max and 1 teacher. So in order to do that with 6 feet spacing between all the desks. When we started, the desks had to all face the same direction, but the state loosened that up and said, as long as you're 6 feet and you're wearing masks, the desks can face each other. So in my classroom, I have the kids set up in little groups, and those empty chairs are chairs that I can go and teach a lesson or teach a little, let's do this again kind of thing with a small group of kids. We also use reading groups. We have my EA that comes in and helps, runs reading groups. And so that it works really nicely that way. The kids are spaced out. They are amazing. They stay in their seats, or they might sit under their seats, or sometimes I let them sit on their desks, but they stay in their spot. They are not wandering around the classroom. They are not getting into things that aren't theirs because they know how important it is. So that part has really worked out nicely. Here are the things that we thought when we were meeting in June and July about what's going to be really hard about doing school in what we call the COVID times. First of all, access to technology. Like I said earlier, in the spring last year, it was hard because not everybody had technology. We were really worried about connectivity. We are a, rural place. There's a lot of areas that don't get great connectivity. I mean, my parents can attest to this. When we do our Zooms, I oftentimes don't have audio that works, or it glitches because of the connectivity. We were worried about student engagement. What was going to happen when we bring kids back when they've been out of school for so long? How are we going to keep them engaged? How are we going to keep them wanting to be interested in their own learning? How are we going to keep those kids who are still online engaged in learning? Transportation is always an issue because with our cohorts, We worried about, kids on the bus. How do you keep them separated while they're on the bus? And how do we make sure that they're not spending too much time on the bus to get to school for such a short amount of time? Access to support services, speech teachers, our resource room teacher, our occupational therapists and our PTs that used to come in and work with kids lost those services in the spring, and we wanted to make sure that those were here and the kids had access to all of those. Food distribution in my district, all kids can have free breakfast and free lunch. And so we have food that's available, but it's a matter of making sure we get kids that food. Right now, while they're in school, they eat breakfast and then they take home a lunch. And then the afternoon group comes in and eats lunch and they take home breakfast. And then we've even added sort of a dinner item, although it's more like an extra lunch. And then, of course, we were worried about how do we keep the virus from spreading in our schools. And this is what it all comes down to, because from my perspective, it's been really amazing. I've had so much fun teaching this last couple of months because of all of these things that have happened. Number one, class sizes. Having 12 kids, 10 kids, it's a dream. It's the way that education should be. I can talk to every single kid every single day. And to be honest, in the past, I would come home and I would just be sick to my stomach because whole day would have gone by and I never had a 5-minute conversation uninterrupted with somebody, because there's 25 kids and they all want you at the same time. So this has been amazing. The small classes allow me to listen to every single kid read every single day. When I'm working with one student and somebody has a question, I can say, I'll be there in a minute. And it really is within a minute. I mean, my response time to their needs is amazing. And what happens from that, I really think, is the kids are learning more than they were when they had larger classes. So yay them. My teaching is more intentional. I have a short amount of time. I know that we have a lot to do, and I've been able to go through and pick out, there's lots of things that we do in education that we've always done. And so we just keep doing them. But this whole, wait a minute, we can't keep doing the same thing, has made a difference, because we're really making sure that what we're teaching is the most important stuff that kids need to know. Our relationships are stronger between the students and I, but also between the students and their peers. And my afternoon class, I wish you guys could come and just be with my afternoon class, because they are, I just love them. There's no way in a million years that these kids would probably ever be friends. They don't live near each other. They're all, spread out. So they're not able to play together, but they worry about one another if they don't show up. They are excited on Mondays when they see each other, and every single kid is part of that small group. And it's amazing to see what kids can do when they're given the chance. Increased parental involvement. I had 100% participation in conferences in the fall. They were on the phone because obviously we couldn't get together and meet, but I was able to talk to every single parent about what their kids are doing. We text parents now, or we use an app called Remind, and parents are willing and able, I think, to ask questions that before the pandemic, I don't think they felt comfortable asking. I've had parents ask, can you talk to my child about this, because we're struggling with it at home. And I don't think before that connection between parents and teachers was as strong as it is now. Behavior has improved because kids get the attention they want. They don't have to wait for help. We're able as teachers, I think, to be able to fill in those holes that kids have sooner, because again, our class sizes are smaller. I don't have kids that are out sick unless they are out sick because they have been exposed to COVID, and then it's a long quarantine time. But we don't have runny noses. We don't have, coughs and the strep throat. I don't know of anybody in my school that's had strep throat this year. And that usually goes through every classroom. So that's pretty cool. Our district committed to technology. We are almost all one-on-one for the entire district. I think that would have happened eventually, but I think the pandemic made it happen faster. And we have been able to show that we can be in school and not spread the virus. So, yay us. And then, as I kind of wrap it up here, in the spring, we heard so much about teachers are heroes. They're amazing. We couldn't do it without us. Parents telling us, oh, how do you handle my kid? And then when fall came around and we found out that, we weren't opening schools right away. And now, obviously, for those older kids who haven't been in school, we hear so much about what we've done to fail kids and how we're not doing enough to get kids back into school, and teachers don't want to work, and it's not safe. And, I listen to NPR when I come to work in the morning, and, in the last couple of days, I've heard 3 reports about how we failed kids, and 1 report about a student with ADHD who thought learning online was a really beneficial thing for him. And that's hard to hear when I know from my personal perspective that the teachers that I'm around are working like crazy to do everything they can do for kids. And I guess what I kind of want to leave you with is that idea that, first of all, you know what? Schools are safe. We can do what we need to do to keep schools safe. I guarantee you my room is cleaner than it ever has been. And that's not a bad thing. So probably that's something that should continue. Kids can wear masks. Kids can stay socially distanced, probably better than adults. We kind of have a little joke in our room that, sometimes that mask slides down under their noses, and we'll say, oh, you have a cute nose, but I don't want to see it right now. And they'll cover it right up because they know how important it is. And they have learned how to care about others. I think that we don't give them the benefit of that knowledge of when somebody is absent and they're, oh, are they okay? They're really genuinely worried about their peers. Their relationships are strong. They've learned how to work in a situation that's not been ideal, but they're still doing it. They've learned that things change. I'll say, I have to pass these out, and then they'll all tell me, oh, because of COVID, and so they've learned that it doesn't have to be the way that we've always thought it could be. You can do something differently. And, I kind of really hope that what we take away from this is that here's an opportunity to change some of the things that we've done in education that don't really work. If we don't look at this and say, okay, what we learned from having these smaller classes and try to change that, then I think that we failed kids. And that would be a really sad thing to have happen. So there you have it. That's what life is like in a classroom. Oh, wait a minute. I almost forgot. Here's my really cute kids. And I will tell you, painting when they have their own supplies is the greatest way to paint ever because it's so much cleaner. But we do what we have always done as far as we read, we write, we do math, we do art, we try to sing, but I'm not much of a singer, so that doesn't always go so well. But we have PE, we go to recess, we just do it in a safer way. And look how cute they are. And that concludes that. I will stop sharing. And
thank you so much, Dayna. I know that Your mom and dad are incredibly proud of you, and I think all of the 51 plus screens viewing today are proud of you as well. It was a great presentation. So let's take some questions for Dayna. If you
Okay, I have to go move because my automatic lights turned off, so I have to go.
okay, well, we'll get some questions teed up then. And let's see, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Yes, Penny.
I understand that Mary Jane Burke is on this Zoom with us.
Yes.
And that is extraordinary. Thank you for spending time with us. And this is an amazing presentation. This is why I belong to this club. And thank you for giving us your time too. And we're so pleased with Marin being used as a model for the state of what you've accomplished. Thank you very much, Mary.
So maybe could I just say a few words? I just want to say what an amazing teacher you just had the opportunity to hear from. Obviously focused on kids, articulate, reflective, everything you want, right? From an amazing, great teacher. So just so you know, I'm a special ed teacher by background, and I just was amazed with this presentation. And, you know, we've been doing things in Marin, you know, many things that you've described are similar, but I would love a copy of your power of what you shared, because you definitely raised some points that I think I can do a better job of amplifying here in Marin, Dayna. So thank you very much.
You bet.
A quick question.
Dayna, I feel the teachers should have been in group 1 getting vaccinations. How about your area? When did the teachers get vaccinated? Are you vaccinated?
In Oregon, we were 1B.
Okay.
So I actually got, I think my first vaccination was the middle of February, and I have been fully vaccinated. But we did the healthcare professionals, and then as soon as they were finished, teachers went in.
I wish California had done the same thing so we get our kids back to school sooner.
Ed, you had a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so once COVID's over, or mostly over, and all the kids can come back full time, what do you, just in your opinion, what have you learned that you think teaching skills or teaching style or techniques that you could bring to the post-COVID world that you think that have been really beneficial right now that you think you'd like to continue doing?
Well, I think one big thing was in March when we went out, our kids did not, I mean, I teach first graders, so they did not have very strong technology skills. They could play PlayStation, but to be able to use it, you know, a computer as a learning device, it was a little hard of a curve there to catch on to. So I think that in integrating technology into your normal classroom is really important for these kids. You know, I don't want to ever do this again, but if I have to, I want to make sure that they can get off from day one. So that I think is a big one. I also think that we worry a lot about kids being in a certain spot, like that you should know this by this age. And I'm not sure that's 100% accurate. I wonder if maybe we should be looking at, as a teacher, I should be teaching kids where they are, not where I think they're supposed to be. So I kind of hope that comes into account when we're all back and we realize that, you know, kids, there are gaps. There's going to be gaps, of course. But how are we going to fill those? I hope that kind of changes.
I guess that would probably take more one-on-one teaching, right? To teach each child at their own.
Yes, where that small class size makes a difference.
Right, yeah.
Gloria, you had a question? You're going to unmute, Gloria.
Here I am. Okay. 2 questions. One is when this is over, how are you going to celebrate with the kids is one. And the second one is what lessons do you think the kids have integrated for their future? How is this going to impact them in when they become teenagers or young adults? There should be something good that comes out of this learning for them as well. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think that what I hope they learn from this is understanding that, when you get information, you have to be able to discern for yourself if that information is credible. And so that ability to critically think about what you're hearing and how you're going to react to it, I think is really important. And I'd like to think that we now have a young generation of kids who are going to better be able to handle something like this if it were to happen again, because they have an experience, and hopefully you can build on that experience. And how are we going to celebrate? Well, we'll probably hug. Kids like to hug. So, I do let them hug me, but I don't tell my principal.
Other questions for Dayna? Let's see.
Well, I could ask another one.
I don't see any other questions at this point. I know we have a lot of other folks on the line. Gary and Tony. Oh, Peter, go right ahead.
Quick question, Dayna. You mentioned this, the change from teachers being heroes to teachers being, impediments to getting the schools open. I'm curious to know from your perspective, how do you think that happened? Where did that come from? How did that all get so twisted?
Well, unfortunately, I think that in our society, teachers are not, prior to the pandemic, they were not as appreciated as they should be. So I think the change was when we were thought of as heroes. And then now when we're back to what it was pre-pandemic. It's just an easy profession, I think, for people to put blame on for a lot of things, or stack on the responsibilities for you're supposed to be doing this, and it's not getting done. And so I think the hero part was unfortunately the part that was different. So maybe that will come back now that we realize that, you know what, teachers are doing a good job.
Thank you. Tony or Gary, I don't know if you had any thing that you wanted to mention. This is your opportunity to bust your buttons because of your daughter's great.
Well, thank you, Chris. We've always been proud of Dayna, and she's just been a great person to have as a daughter. So our son is that great too, but we've learned so much from her that we probably haven't talked to her, and that's one of our lacking perhaps. You may not always know what your kids are doing, but they're out there busting their butt too. Great job, Dayna. Thank you.
Well, perhaps I should take this moment to ask you, which child is your favorite?
He has not been immunized.
Chris?
Go ahead, Tony. Go.
I just want to say that this little girl wanted to be a teacher from the time she was in the 3rd grade. She's doing a great job.
He is. And I'm glad you had that opportunity to say that. And I'm glad we all had an opportunity to get to know you and or know you a little better, Dayna. Thank you so much for your presentation.
You know what? Just a second. Dayna is their favorite girl, and their son is their favorite boy.
There you go.
So we'll get a nice speaker's gift out to you that I'm sure that you will appreciate. And thank you again for taking the time. All the best to your kids.
Thank you.
It's very apparent how close you are to them, and all the best making it through the rest of the school year as well.